Now that the celestial threat has ended and Judgment Day has come and gone, it's time for the heroes of the Marvel Universe to pick up the pieces. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Judgment Day Omega and find out what happens next together, shall we? Alrighty then, so first things first, they call this an Omega issue, they call this a big important part of the Judgment Day storyline, but I'm gonna tell you right up front, this is just the finale of Kieran Gillen's Eternals series with a couple extra scenes thrown in for spice. But please don't let that scare you away though, please keep watching, I need the views. As we join the story proper, Makkari is writing the brand new Book of Ajak, essentially the story of how Sersi martyred herself for the greater eternal cause and how Ajak fused with the celestial progenitor to ascend to godhood. So, you know, the story you just finished reading. From there, we check on in with Icarus, who's actually going to visit the mother of the young man who died so that he may be resurrected. Again, this scene makes a lot more sense and has a lot more impact if you actually read Kieran Gillen's Eternal series. At first, the mother is angry and tries to attack Icarus, but she quickly remembers that that's not going to do anything. He's immortal, which means he's going to have to be living with this grief for the rest of his life, and in fact, that grief kind of brings them together in a weird way. Now, hey, what about the Hex? They were one of the more interesting creations of this brand new run and storyline. Well, the main Hex, the one that loves poetry, before it ultimately takes its leave and gets sent back into the Eternal Vaults, actually goes and has a conversation with the friend it met on the internet. Things are understandably pretty tense. The Hex had killed and terrorized a whole world, but at the same time, it's a thinking, feeling being, created for the sole purpose to fight wars, and yet despite the horrifying reasons that it was created, it still tries to battle against those impulses by doing something like poetry. In fact, before she goes, the Hex tells her friend that she should go on with her own creative endeavors and finally create that zine like she always wanted, and that she promises to read it next time she gets unleashed, even if that is in another 100,000 years or so. Now, even though Ajak Celestia had ascended to the level of godhood at the end of the Judgment Day storyline, that doesn't mean all of Eternal Kind worships her. In fact, this has only created a bigger schism between the Orthodox Eternals, once again led by Zurus, and the Heretic Eternals, who are basically just the movie-adjacent Eternals. There is some hope of reunification, though. Star Fox is actually once again recognized by his Eternal brothers and sisters, and he's been even given a brand new job, Minister of Change. What exactly do the Orthodox Eternals see as so objectionable about what Ajak is selling? Well, first things first, she went out of her way to actually try and rewrite and re-envision the principles, basically giving them a much-needed makeover for a modern era. Protect the Celestial? Well, as we saw with Judgment Day, sometimes Celestials need to be protected from themselves. Protect the machine that is Earth? Well, everyone lives on Earth, they're all part of the same system, which means Eternals should go out of their way to protect everyone who needs it. Likewise, with curbing excessive deviation, the Eternals should go out of their way to protect all beings from those species that would prey on them. Ajak even added her own special principle too, and that is, of course, treat every day like it's Judgment Day. And I mean, that one is pretty self-explanatory. But it also has a special meaning for the Heretic Eternals and informs their brand new mission. They have been given their amazing life and powers because of the humans of Earth, and that's a debt that they can never pay back, but one they will spend the rest of their immortality trying to. Now, what happened to Uranus? They set him up as the next big bad. I honestly thought he was going to be the villain of the entirety of Judgment Day, but no, the story ends with him back in the Exclusion, beating the ever-loving shit out of Droog to pass the time. As Zurus explains, as part of the reparation deal with the mutants of Krakoa, they're officially allowed to use Uranus's power for at least 1 hour whenever they want. Keep in mind, this dude almost destroyed Earth, almost destroyed Mars, and basically it's giving the mutants a nuke to launch whenever they want. And considering that the nation of Krakoa keeps making enemies all the time, it's a nuke they're probably going to end up using sooner rather than later. Uranus is stoked about the whole thing too. He gets to live and he'll be free again at some point in the future. You could make the argument that he's the real winner of the Judgment Day storyline. Crow and Thena also get a little scene to themselves wherein they talk about the loss of Sersi and what she meant to both of them. Crow admits that he did love Sersi, but loving an immortal is kind of a difficult task because you know full well you're gonna die before them. But if nothing else, Judgment Day has seemingly changed deviant society. For the first time ever, they were found worthy amongst the gods, and because of that, it seems like they're actively adopting religion religion. The hope is that the new god Ajax Celestia might actually be able to do what the old Celestials could never do and actually cure excessive deviation, meaning so that deviants don't turn into crazy blood-hungry monsters every so often. Now, what about the machine that is Earth? One of the most effective and honestly sad parts of the Judgment Day story was that in order to save planet Earth, Faustus basically needed to hit the hard reset button on the Earth. Well, before it totally lost all of its memories and personality, it actually gave Faustus a message, one to carry to Krakoa. Obviously, the blacksmith isn't met with the warmest reception by the mutants, who are still cleaning up all the death and destruction on the island. But you know what? Get the tissues ready, because Gillen has one last gut punch to deliver. You see, as Faustus explains, when the Celestials came to Earth millions of years ago, they turned ancient humans into their Eternals. And when it came time to create the system that was the machine that is Earth, they decided to base it on a very complex system that already existed on Earth, a living island. Yes, that's right, Krakoa and the machine that is Earth were actually related. In fact, the final message of the machine that is Earth before it heroically sacrificed itself to save everyone else was simply, "Goodbye, mother, father, self, other." By God, that is effective writing. Why am I so emotionally torn up about the planet's disembodied voice? Now, as the comic begins to wind down, we see that Icarus is actually living with the deceased boy's mother now. He's changed his identity ever so slightly by shaving his head, and we learn as an act of eternal penance, Icarus and the others are actively living amongst humankind right now, doing everything in their power to make lives easier and save them where it counts. It's a bold new era for them, a new future, and one that they hope will actually end up being beneficial for everyone this time around as the comic comes to a close. And so that was Judgment Day Omega issue number 1, everybody, the big finale not only of the Judgment Day event storyline, but also seemingly of Gillen's time on the Eternals. And if this is truly the end of his run, then I would say this was a very solid, resonant, and satisfying conclusion, one that wraps up pretty much all the major storylines he started with. Now, if you weren't reading Gillen's Eternals and were only keeping up with Judgment Day because it was the big Marvel summer event this year, then I would say this final issue doesn't really have a lot to offer you. But as someone who did get all caught up before the big event itself because I wanted the backstory going in, I must say I appreciate everything that went into this finale. I never really saw myself becoming an Eternals fan and probably wouldn't have picked it up if I didn't think I needed to know what was going on for the Judgment Day event, but I must say Gillen did a really good job and made me a believer by the time it was all over. I hope someone actually does pick up and run with the brand new status quo that he created here. Overall, I'd give this one a solid 8 out of 10. Good stuff.
Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.